Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Sunday, April the 30th, 2023. Today I want to consider transgenderism and its implications for astrology, and it certainly has implications for astrology. In the same way that we worry about pronouns now, we also have to worry about the dynamics of the horoscope. Now, let me explain that. The traditional male planets, the main ones, the really important ones, are the Sun and Mars, and the female planets are the Moon and Venus. So in a male chart, the idea is that the Sun and Mars are owned. They say something about, you as a man, for example. And the Moon and the Venus are projected. They say something about perhaps what you're looking for in a partner of the opposite sex. And it's reversed. So in a woman, the Moon and Venus are the planets representing who the woman is, and the Sun and Mars are projected. They say what she's looking for in the opposite sex. So what does that mean if someone says that they are transgender, if a man actually thinks he's a woman? What does that mean? Does that mean that these projections change? So, if a man becomes a woman, does he suddenly start to own his or her Moon and Venus, and do the Sun and Mars suddenly get projected? It's a real issue, which I'm not going to come up with an answer to. I know what the transgender answer to that would be, assuming one believes in astrology. And if you're a transgender activist, you would no doubt, and you believed in astrology, you would no doubt say that the projections had switched. So when you change sex, the role of these planets switches. And I just don't know how that fits in. The way I see it, would look at sun signs. I believe the sun sign is more important in a male chart than in a female chart. In general, actually, what seems to happen for men is that they start off as their moon sign, but when they hit a certain age, maybe 22, but it's a process as they move through late teens into their 20s. They switch from their moon sign to their sun sign, and in a woman it's the opposite. She often starts off as the sun sign, and as she hits adulthood, she starts to become more and more like her moon. Anyway, what I wanted to do was look at a chart or a person that's been in the news all the time. I'm late to the party. I should have talked about this weeks ago. But I did want to look at the horoscope of Dylan Mulvaney. He or she is the transgender woman who, for a time, fronted the Bud Light campaign and it was Bud Light that caused the problem, but caused massive drops in sales. So I wanted to look at her chart, particularly as her chart is available, not just the date of birth, but also the time of birth. So let's see. Let's see what we can find. I want to kind of take it from a general perspective first. So what is the first thing you see when you look at that chart? Oh, there is, by the way, Dylan Mulvaney, born on December the 29th, 1996, at 10:10 a.m. in San Diego, California. What is the first thing you notice? Well, I think the first thing you notice is that the chart is somewhat lopsided. You'll see that pretty much all the planets, except for Moon and Saturn, are on the upper part of the horoscope. So, I'm not even looking at sun signs, elements, I'm just looking at shape. So when you have a planet that's all up in the air like that, what does that suggest? Well, I think it's kind of obvious. It suggests someone who is very focused on the world, is very focused on perhaps on career, on being seen. That's what it's all about. But there is an empty part of the chart, particularly down here. There's nothing down here, and that does suggest to me a certain lack of anchoring in the chart. This person may be so obsessed with being noticed, being out there in the public eye, but they may forget about their roots, their foundations, the fundamental person they are. So that's the first thing I look at. What else might we look at, even before looking at signs? Well, let's look at elements. The elements. We've got the Moon is in Virgo and Mars is in Virgo. Those two are Earth signs. And Sun, Mercury, Jupiter are in Capricorn. So without getting specific about particular planets, we notice that 5 of the traditional planets, when I say traditional planets, it's Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn and Mars. I don't count Uranus, Neptune and Pluto and the nodes and asteroids and whatever in this. I'm just looking at the traditional planets. So we have 7 traditional planets, and Dylan Mulvaney has 5 of the 7 in Earth signs. So what does that mean? I think it might mean that he is quite grounded in terms of knowing about money and material possessions. And I would have thought you're dealing with someone who is motivated by how much he has in the bank. What he's doing is, I think, to a great extent, it may be a financial operation. This is, you think about it logically. How do you make money in a particular situation? And this is how you do it. It's really been very successful, I suppose. I think Bud Light paid him a lot of money for that marketing campaign. So you're not dealing with someone who's all pie in the sky, doesn't know what's going on. Yeah, you're dealing with a Capricorn. Sun, Mercury, Jupiter in Capricorn. Moon and Mars in Virgo. Notice Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter in Capricorn, as I've said before, is slightly problematic because it's fallen. Jupiter is a planet that's supposed to be about vision, and you put it in Capricorn, and where is the vision? No, the vision is all about how much I'm making, how much power I have. That's what it is, and that's not how vision works. You can't have vision and broad horizons when you're only thinking about your own personal needs. So Jupiter in Capricorn is a bit like Moon in Capricorn. So that's the Capricorn thing is extremely strong. Moon in Virgo. Moon in Virgo is very precise. It's all about details. I have never watched any of his videos, his blogs, or does he have a blog? No, I think he has a YouTube channel, and has millions of subscribers, and how he's becoming a woman. And from what I've heard, he has that picture of him that you see all the time. Is he modelling himself on Audrey Hepburn and getting the lipstick right and getting the image right? That's Moon in Virgo, wanting to be this perfect image. Everything has to be perfect. Everything is very, the details really do matter. And there's Mars in Virgo, putting huge amounts of energy into the details. but which is being progressed. He is a biological man, but he says he's transitioned. So is the Mars him, or is the moon him? Is Mars what he's looking for in the opposite sex? I mean, now he's a woman, he's looking for a man who's Mars in Virgo. Or is it the opposite? Maybe the moon? What is the moon? Is that him? Or is it something he's looking for? I don't think it's quite difficult to ask. It's quite difficult to answer that question without attracting controversy. So, yeah, that's certainly something to think about. Now, what is, of course, particularly striking about this chart, which makes me think that in some respects he is living out his destiny, is the position of Venus. Venus is obviously the planet of beauty. It's the planet of young women. It's a planet of relating. It's a planet of clothes, fashion, all that kind of stuff. And he has Venus exactly on the midheaven. Exactly. And so when you've got Venus on the midheaven, this is what you're trying to project. Tucker Carlson, I talked to him about him a few days ago. He had Venus on the midheaven in Aries. Now, he was using his Venus in Aries on the midheaven just as a way of projecting himself on TV, projecting himself to his audience, being a person who his audience found attractive, and they wanted to watch him. And of course, now he's gone, Fox's viewing figures have dropped off. Now, this Venus in Dylan Mulvaney's chart is much more literal. It's about self-regard. Venus on the midheaven can be very focused on what it looks like. Venus on the midheaven is rather like someone looking at themselves in the mirror. Of course, there's nothing wrong with looking at oneself in the mirror. I mean, if what you look like is important, I suppose if one were to put lipstick on, one probably needs a mirror, and one needs to know what one looks like. But it's enormous self-regard, and at the same time, it is the woman, and he wants to be. The midheaven is the career, the midheaven is the business, and Venus is on the midheaven, so the business is being the girl. So that's perfect. What a great career. And he really is making a lot of money, or at least has made a lot of money out of it. And so what I would say about that Venus on the midheaven is QED. What is it? Quod erat demonstrandum. It is as it is. It shows quite clearly what he is and what his career is. And I think that his chart is, I would have said, is quite a good demonstration of astrology working. Now, one thing I would like to point out, though, something not so easy, is his Mars-Saturn opposition. Now, there's his Mars and... Is it her Mars-Saturn opposition? I don't know. There's Mars in Virgo, opposition Saturn in Aries. And in fact, Mars and Saturn are astride the Aries point. There's 0 degrees Aries. So Mars-Saturn opposition can actually be very frustrated. It can really find it difficult to get things done. It's really annoying and need to get things done. I often associate Mars-Saturn aspects with drumming, beating, trying to get something done. There's real frustration. You need to take a lot of physical exercise sometimes if you've got a Mars-Saturn aspect. But his Mars-Saturn opposition is on the Aries it links up with Aries. In other words, he's got Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and I've talked about this a lot. Princess Diana had Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. She lived out her Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint by dying in public. Hitler had Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. I mean, that's obvious. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, he has got Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. Take that as however you want. Victoria Nuland, who was born on the same day as Princess Diana, who in many respects is the architect of America's policy in the Ukraine. Like Diana, because she's born on the same day, same year, everything, not the same time, but yeah, she has Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So Dylan Mulvaney has Aries on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. What does it mean? Well, perhaps through no fault of his own, he has caused huge damage to Bud Light. Aries is the world at large, and his involvement in its marketing caused a lot of damage. He needs to think very carefully about what impact he is having on the world around him. That requires a lot of self-reflection. What is he doing? It's all very well, being on, making a lot of money from a YouTube channel. That's what, it's very focused. But he needs to think about what he's doing, because if he's not careful, he may be having a negative impact on the world around him. And I'm not just talking about the fortunes of Bud Light. So anyway, there are some observations on Dylan Mulvaney's chart. I do think he needs to be a little more sensitive. He does not have any water in his chart. No planets in water signs. So there may be trends going on around him, but he needs to make more of an effort to tune into, because he might make mistakes. He might misunderstand what's going on. Oh, another thing, that Venus, of course, is in Sagittarius. Venus in Sagittarius really does like to let it all hang out. Sagittarius is a very over-the-top sign. Venus in Sagittarius wants to shout from the rooftops, or at least from a YouTube channel. And yeah, he's certainly done that very well. And he really does seem to be living out that Venus on the midheaven. So enough of that. Let's look at today, Sunday. So Sunday, the moon continues to move. Well, it's just moved into, yesterday I mentioned that it moved into Virgo. It's now at 10 Virgo. It has made an opposition to Saturn. So at the beginning of the day, and if you're in Europe or Asia, you would have felt that moon opposition Saturn. It may just feel that it's difficult to express ourselves with moon opposition Saturn. Perhaps we're just too concerned about details. We're concerned about details maybe getting us down, and it may be getting everyone else down. But towards the end of the day, things do change. The moon is moving away from that opposition of Saturn, and it's moving to a trine of the Sun and a trine of Mercury. And so that means that we shouldn't be completely put off if at the beginning of the day it feels like a brick wall. If we keep persevering, I think things will start to get easier. Now, as far as the midpoints are concerned, Mercury is there's Mars, there's Saturn, and Mercury is on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, and we may find ourselves having some very negative thoughts. We might just feel that things just are not going to get better. We might start having a really negative view of the world, an almost depressing view of the world, and it might just seem that everything is miserable. So if you find yourself going into a spiral of negativity, don't worry too much, because Mercury is not going to stay on the Mars-Saturn midpoint for too long. Just wait it out, and don't be tempted to dump your negativity on other people. Mercury is the planet of communication. And some of us may be tempted to just be overly negative, worse, what's the point? You're born, get old, die. It's all a waste of time. We are wasting our time. There's no point in anything Mercury on the Mars Saturn. So don't go down that road, and if you are feeling negative, don't dump that negativity onto other people. Don't spread the bad vibes. I'm always guilty of that. I'm way too negative. I always see things in terms of death and destruction and whatever. So I need to be I need to be extra careful on Sunday. Particularly as I'm a Gemini, and Mercury rules Gemini. Gemini and Virgos are the two signs that could be really inclined to be negative. What else? Saturn is on the Venus-Uranus midpoint. I think in terms of relationships, there's perhaps a certain danger of getting overexcited and then there being sudden disappointment. So in relationships, don't get your hopes up and take every moment, take every minute as it happens, and don't think too much about the future, because if we just enjoy the moment, particularly when with Venus is actually on the Jupiter-Uranus midpoint, and so we can have some really interesting meetings. If we go to a party, fun people, but don't overthink it. Don't think that anything wonderful is going to happen. Just enjoy the moment. Now, as far as my forecasts for the 12 signs are concerned, sorry, I'm going to read them out. I hope you don't mind, but here we go. Aries, 3 stars. Just because the day is boring doesn't mean it's not useful. Taurus, 4 stars. There's a certain sense of excitement, and perhaps there'll be good news. Gemini, 3 stars. Your thoughts could drift into negative directions. Yeah, that's what I mean by Mercury on the Mars-Saturn midpoint. Cancer, 2 stars. You and someone else have a difference of opinion. The moon rules Cancer, and there's moon opposition Saturn. Leo, 4 stars. You know what you're doing, and money-wise, you'll have a certain amount of luck. Virgo, 2 stars. Avoid getting too close to anyone, at least to begin with. It's that Moon-Saturn opposition. Moon's in Virgo, could be a problem there. Libra, 4 stars. You have a quiet belief that things will soon get much better. Scorpio, 3 stars. You need to change the narrative, perhaps through shock tactics. Sagittarius, 3 stars. Give time to your family, but don't forget important details. Capricorn, 3 stars. You want to soar into the clouds, but the facts of the matter need to be addressed. Aquarius, 2 stars. The party has gone on for too long, and you're the bucket of cold water to end it all. And finally, Pisces, 4 stars. Your relationships with other people steadily improve. So that's the astrology for today, and I will finish with the I Ching. Now, sorry, I haven't got a picture of the I Ching, but the first hexagram I threw was the abyss. Big hole in the ground. It's about a danger that's out there that we're familiar with. We understand this danger. And perhaps if we get used to, we familiarize ourselves, if we know it's there, then in the end we can somehow deal with this danger. So what is the danger? Just think about today, Sunday. Well, what is that thing that is dangerous? And then what do? Well, in the first instance, you don't act. There is really nothing to be done. If you were, well, might be something to be done, but if you act to deal with the danger in an assertive way, you might actually make the danger worse. Isn't that often the case? We've perhaps done something stupid and we want to put it right, but by putting it right, we just make it much worse. It may be that kind of situation. So we don't act, and then we realize that this problem is not going to go away immediately. We just have to accept it. We just have to bear with it. And as the day progresses, we might eventually start to work out how to deal with it. And that's when we get a movement. The abyss changes to hexagram number 57, which is the wind. So maybe quite literally, when you see the wind going, if there is wind, maybe that would maybe the time to start sorting a problem out. Metaphorically, the wind in the I Ching, it's about wind going everywhere. We had the wind a few days ago, and it's about looking into all those nooks and crannies, looking for the problem, looking for the solution, looking for a way to get out of the danger. And if you flow with the wind, you'll see that there is a way of getting round the problem and moving onto firm land where the danger is finally avoided and removed. So that's all I'm going to say for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow.